Okay, in this video, we're going to take a look at the table saw. We're going to look at the safe operation and all the parts of this tool. Now, there's actually a lot of different parts here, so pay close attention and feel free to go back and re-watch this. Starting here on the top, we have our table, and underneath the blade guard, we have our blade. Notice it comes out of the table. That's where we get the name table saw. We also have a fence here. This one's specifically called a rip fence. This is for making rip cuts, those long cuts going with the board, with the grain. We also have sitting over here a miter gauge. This is going to run in these two miter tracks. This is what we're going to be using for cross cuts. It's important to keep those two things straight, that we use the rip fence for rip cuts and we use the miter gauge for any cross cuts. We don't want to trap boards between the blade and the fence. Part of the blade guard, we also have this very nice thing called a splitter. Sometimes you'll see the table saw with a riving knife in here. Both of these two things do the same operation. They prevent any board from pinching on the back of the blade because the back of this blade is the part going up towards you. And if it pinches there, it can kick back at you, which we want to make sure to avoid. So make sure that when you're using this, you've got the blade guard and splitter on, or on the occasion you can get away with it, a riving knife. Okay, here we are on the front of the saw, and there's a few parts that we need to go over. First of all, here's our power switch. There's actually a big paddle here, and it clearly says push to stop on it. A little less clearly is down below, it says pull to start. So we're gonna be able to pull this out. Now we can only turn the saw on if we have this green light. This green light is telling us the saw is ready to go. If there's no light, the whole saw has been powered off, and no matter how much you turn this on, it won't do anything. When you turn the saw on, you might see a little bit of red flashing light first. And once you have a solid green light, you're ready to go. That red flashing light signals that the saw is getting itself set up. It is a saw stop with the brake. We'll talk about that in class. So if you come to the saw and you don't have a green light, this won't do anything. When you do have the green light, when you turn it on, that's what we get. This saw is also, the stop is also conveniently placed so you can hit it with your knee if you ever need to. A couple other things worth noting on this front of the saw. There's actually two handles here that we can rotate. This one here raises and lowers the blade. When adjusting the blade height, you want to lower the blade so that the teeth are just above our board, so we don't have too much sticking out. And this one over here tilts the blade left to the left, so we can crank it this way. Both of these have locking knobs in the middle. You just need to lightly tighten those up to set it. Now that we've seen all the different parts on the saw and how they work, let's go ahead and make a cut. I've got a board here that I want to rip, again, a long cut with the grain, to 3 inches. This board is about 3.5 inches, but instead of setting this for a 1/2 inch, I'm going to set it for the size I actually want, which was 3 inches. When adjusting the fence on the table saw, we lift the handle and we can slide it over. There's a marking on the left and on the right. You want to use the one on the outside of the blade to line up with our cut. So I can line that up right on 3 right there. And then lock the handle down by pushing down on this handle. I don't need to mark it on this board because the accuracy of this fence is nice and parallel with the blade, and it's accurate enough that this is going to end up coming out right at 3 inches. So no marks required on the table saw, which is great. To get the rip cut set up, we're going to take this, we're going to set it right here up against the fence. My left hand is going to hold it tight, but I'm not going to continue forward. I don't want to put my hand up here next to the blade, even if there's a board in between, because I don't want to be pushing this material into that fence or into that moving blade. So instead, I'm going to be pushing it into the fence. I'm going to plant my left hand here on the table, pushing tight to the fence so there's no gap, and then I'm going to use a push stick to push something through. If I've got more space, if I've got something out here greater than 6 inches, there's enough room for my hand to safely go through here. But anything under 6 inches, I'm going to be looking at a push stick in order to do this. So I'm all set up. I'm ready to go ahead and push this thing through. Let's go ahead and lower the blade guard, and I can make this cut. So watch as this stays nice and tight to the fence. My hand doesn't go up near the blade, and the push stick goes all the way through. As I finish my rip cut, you'll notice that this board, the cutoff, is still just sitting there. It's not any trouble at all. We'll let the blade come to a complete stop, And now we can lift up our blade guard and we can retrieve our piece. Let's also look at how do we make a cross cut on the table saw. To do that, we'll need to switch out to the riving knife. Okay, let's go ahead and change out this blade guard and we'll see what we have here. You can see the blade guard raises and lowers here. There's a little finger hole here you can pull this out with and we'll just set it aside. Inside here, if we take a good close look, you can see a gray handle. That gray handle is going to come in and we're going to pull it up so that it's vertical, and that releases the blade guard so that it can come out. Then we just have to take this out, set it aside. We'll grab our riving knife, slide it right into that same slot, and push this handle back down. Then it's just a matter of putting this back in place. And we have ourselves a riving knife installed. With the riving knife in, we can now go ahead and make a crosscut. Now a crosscut goes across the grain, but we can't use the fence, the rip fence, for this operation. This is just not stable enough, and the board could get pinched between the blade and the fence, and it's too short to reach our riving knife here. That's going to send this blade kicking back, and it's very dangerous. So instead of using the rip fence, we're going to use our miter gauge. It slides into these tracks. You can use it on either the left or the right, whichever one you're more comfortable with. And we can set this up here, take our board, align it here, and now using one hand to clamp these two things together. My other hand's going to do all the pushing, but I'm off to the side for this. Again, that cutoff piece is not a danger. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not going to touch it until that blade has stopped spinning. And once it has, it's perfectly safe to get this. So here you go. We've got a table saw. It can make cross cuts and rip cuts really accurately and really smoothly. These are ready to be glued up into a joint and assembled into a project.